There we go. Just going to copy this over. And we're live. There we go. Nice. So good to see you, by the way.
Thank you for having me, Larry. I'm glad to be
How
here.
have you been? You've been busy, I take it.
I have been busy. Usual stuff, dad stuff, been working on the book, hypnosis appointments, um, you know, treading water.
Yeah, treading water. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Just trying to
Yeah.
sort of, I mean, the news cycle's crazy, but it's always crazy. Maybe it's a tad bit crazier, but you kind of take a step back and you think, this is the time I chose to be in. So there must be a reason.
As Dolores would say, we're all here because we have a golden ticket.
Yeah.
Out of all the times in history that we could have chosen to be here, which we probably are going to, have all kinds of opportunities to go and visit the past if we wish. If we want to go back in time and see what our lives were in Atlantis in another life, we could do that. But we chose to be here, not there at this time. So it makes you wonder what's so important about this era that we are currently in. Any idea from hypnosis?
Well, there's wisdom in what you said. I mean, consider the grandeur of all of spiritual, the whole spiritual kingdom and all the extra dimensions and all of that. If you consider all of that, we're here. Our higher selves chose for us to be here. And so in one way, yes, you want to focus on the greater spiritual stuff, but you don't want to be so focused over there that you forget to be here, because this is where your higher self sent you.
Yes, exactly. And the monotony of daily life is, I think, the one thing that some of us kind of get roped into, and we just feel like we're not in the place we want to be, which is quite different to being the place that we need to be.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people probably feel like fishies out of water.
Yes.
They feel like fishies out of water these days because it's like someone is attempting to pull the metaphorical rug out from underneath society. But the weird thing is that the greater spiritual, I guess, consciousness one strives for, you sort of like can start seeing the Broadway play directors and the stagehands and the casting calls, and it's like, wait, okay, you're supposed to be the supervillain in Act 3, and you're supposed to be the guy that betrays somebody, and it feels like roles. It feels, things kind of feel less organic in the news cycle, and it feels more like people are playing parts, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And these roles are very important considering many of us chose them before we even incarnated. So we're living out like an actor, we choose a role because we're very good at delivering those lines and playing out that character.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then once you cross over on the other side and you wake up and then you see those supervillains, and then you might be like, wow, man, you really played a convincing villain in my life. Holy moly. I'm still mad at you. That's how good you are.
It reminds me of what was the guy's name? Ralph Fiennes that played Voldemort. And he's walking down the road and children would be like, and they're excited to see him, but they're also afraid of him. They're like, because it's so funny how people assume that's who you are, but many of these souls, that's not. It's just who they've been asked to be for this particular incarnation.
Yeah, and then they design their life accordingly, 100%.
Yes.
It sounds like you've read some of Dolores Cannon. I know you have. I'm just being facetious.
Well, you had some really good insight the other day, because one of the questions we had during one of our Monday Astara talks was about the Antichrist. This is something that has come up a couple times because people are, with so many biblical prophecies that we do notice coming true, whether it's through self-manifestation. A lot of prophecies do kind of self-manifest through intention. But because also there's just like a culmination of all of these things that are happening at this time. It's like a major crossroad. So for a role as such as the Antichrist, you had some really great insight. Do you mind sharing that again?
I would love
Who is
to.
the Antichrist?
It's everybody and nobody. So
Yeah.
what is being expressed is sort of, I think, misunderstood mainstream religion projected onto the masses. And it's also a mixture of fear mixed in with that mainstream religion. Um, I'm a little bit critical of mainstream religion, mostly because I came up in it, but I'm not one of these people that came up in it and didn't analyze it, right? I'm not one of these people that just walked into a church and was like, oh, I don't like this, I'm out, and never pay attention to it again. I actually studied the material and figured out what it was that bothered me. And what it was that bothered me was oftentimes the attitudes of the clergy, and some of the text of the Bible itself that is so obviously out of character and out of place, but yet it goes unacknowledged by the same clergy. And so I guess I don't like being in a giant room full of a bunch of folks who look at this with an uncritical eye. Their eyes glass over whenever someone starts saying the name Jesus, and then they just turn off all critical thought. And it's like, it just feels uncomfortable, almost cult-like to me. It feels brainwashy, and that has never sat well with me. Even though I grew up in it, I went to private religious schools. You know, most people went to church only on Sundays. I had to go to church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. You know, yeah, you're the same, right?
Bible study, yeah, church every Sunday, and we had to wear dresses every Wednesday for our chapel course, all this stuff. You know, it's like, yeah, they get you when you're young.
They do. I made the mistake of joking one time at my Lutheran. I was a religious mutt, right? We went to, I'll get into it later, but we went to a Lutheran high school, and I joked with one of the administrators that, you know, the Sabbath day is really on Saturday. So here we are. We literally go to church every other day but Saturday. Saturday's the one day we don't go to church.
Makes you wonder why that is.
Right? He didn't like that.
Interesting.
So anyway, kind of funny. Antichrist. What is being talked about with Antichrist is sort of one end of a spectrum. Now, when anyone starts reading not just Gnostic or text, Dead Sea Scrolls, Nag Hammadi, not just those things, but even in Jesus and the Essenes and Dolores Cannon, you can almost see a spectrum of what am I going to say? I want to say light versus dark. You can say a spectrum of light and dark playing out on this planet. And I really love the symbology of the yin yang, yin yang. I'll change it depending on what day of the week you ask me.
Yes.
But you know, that's a very cool symbol. I wish I could pull one up for you, but the yin yang is just it. People think that Antichrist is in direct opposition with Christ consciousness. Spoiler alert, guys. I know we don't have too much time to get into it all, but Jesus Christ, whose name was Yeshua, not Jesus Christ, whole other issue. He never said, hey, I'm going to be back someday, and then we're going to send all the evildoers to hell. That's not what he said. Okay? That's not it. Christ consciousness is what was returned. He was teaching people to do as he did, perform the same spiritual miracles he was doing, approach people with the same amount of love and authenticity that he had. This is what he was trying to teach his disciples. He was trying to unplug 12 people from the Matrix. Maybe 13, depending upon which books you're reading. He was trying to unplug a bunch of people from the Matrix who just resisted him hook, line, and sinker. Maybe they were beyond the age, like it says in the Matrix. Maybe they were beyond the age of being able to be unplugged because his disciples resisted him. Nonetheless, he persisted. And so near the end, he said, he promised a return of Christ consciousness, not that he himself in the physical body would return in the flesh. And if Christ consciousness is what is coming down, if this is what you all are downloading, all of you viewers who are downloading this as you meditate and pray and engage in your modalities, if you are downloading Christ consciousness little by little, struggling bit by bit, right? Then the opposite can also happen. Then there are those in society who are slipping more and more into darkness, into ignorance, into I guess the more negative emotions, the more karmic traps. And so what you see when you put those things together is not one line. It's not a linear line. You have the yin yang. The yin yang, you have, if you can picture the yin yang, you have the white light. Yes, I'm glad you brought that today.
What a coincidence.
Holy
You
moly.
have the light and the dark. You have the dark within the light.
Beautifully said. And those two things are not in dynamic opposition.
No.
Those two things are in dynamic balance. And so, as in one way, if I could speak to it to a layperson, the more you climb up the spiritual ladders of consciousness and awareness, someone else is climbing down, right? But the game of the universe here, guys, is how do you integrate? You have to integrate the dark and the light. You cannot just, try and excise the dark and kill them off and pretend they don't exist, right? They are here for acknowledgement. They are parts of ourselves. And so
somebody once said that they're like the shadow side of Source.
Wonderfully said. And I know other popular influencers really hone in on this fact that this isn't a game of good versus evil. This is a game of polarity integration. And so in that respect,
frequency shifting. Yeah.
In that respect, you've got Christ consciousness and you have anti-Christ consciousness. And so let's say someone is so deep into the Christ consciousness, right? They would be like our avatars, our leaders, our spiritual mentors, the ones trying to unplug other people from the matrix. Well, the polar opposite of that would be, we talk about them from time to time, the world elite, the ones propagating all the negativity across the planet, the ones that own the media, the people that hold all the puppet strings. The 1% of people would be the anti-Christ consciousness, the 1% of people that kind of pull the strings on this planet. Some of them, not all of them, some of them would represent the most extreme opposite of Christ consciousness. Yet, we have to integrate them. Right?
And yet many of those have been playing that role because they were asked to play that role so that souls could actually learn from the experience and so they could uplift and enlighten themselves. So it's funny how the polarities are used. In fact, there was this one case a couple months ago for SRT where one of the soul guides actually caused an attachment to happen. And I said, why would a soul guide cause an attachment to happen? Why would they? Well, it's basically like they invited him in. And it turns out that it was actually a plan from the higher self. The higher self actually wanted it to happen because she was in training for things later on.
Like
so
training wheels.
You had to go through the experience of actually being possessed in order to help people through that have been possessed. So that was interesting too. It's like the light was working with the dark in order to actually be able to move forward. And that really surprised me. I didn't realize the light and the dark work together because you always think they're in opposition, but they're actually not. It's more like they're interwoven.
And our task is to interweave them, as you said. And how that happens, that is a dissertation, that is a giant committee. That's all of us trying to work together simultaneously with the light and the dark. That's how that happens. Because it's true, the dark doesn't need to be so dark to teach us their lessons. Like, do they really have to do all those things that were on the Georgia Guidestones just to teach us a lesson? I guess that depends on us light side people. How much are we willing to listen? Right?
Yeah.
If someone says, "Hey, I'm dark. Are you going to listen to me?" and we just say no, we
got to get louder and louder to motivate people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is a very Gnostic concept, integration of the dark and the light, or, maybe I'll just call it the gray. We should seek the gray, because nothing is black and white, is it? Nothing is black and white. And so, interestingly enough, Yeshua himself, in a lot of the books left out of the Bible, he engaged in modalities and spiritual beliefs that would get him burned at the stake if he were alive during the Inquisition, or he'd end up at Salem at a witch trial. Like in a way, the Catholic Church, which is where the Council of Nicaea, Catholic Church sprung up from the Council of Nicaea. The Catholic Church couldn't handle the real Yeshua. They couldn't handle how light he was, or how witchy he was, because and there's a book I want to recommend to everybody here. You can find it free online. It's called The Gospel of the Holy 12. Okay, and in it, the history behind this book is beautiful, by the way. And of course, it did not make it into the Bible. But I just want to share with you one little piece of this to give you an idea. And as I read it, I think it will become very clear why Rome left it out. Is it okay if I read this real quick?
Oh, by all means, please do.
Okay. So this is from the Gospel of the Holy 12. It's instead of saying chapters in the book, it goes by lectures. This is lecture number 6 in the Gospel of the Holy 12. And Jesus, after that he had finished his study of the law, went down again into Egypt, so that he might learn of the wisdom of the Egyptians. If he was the son of God, why does he have a need to go learn from the Egyptians?
Shouldn't he be omnipotent?
Yeah. Shouldn't he have just snapped his fingers and just be like, boom?
Oh,
okay.
Downloaded. Like Neo. Oh, yep, got that. Okay. Yes.
I love that. I love the Neo thing.
I know, me too.
So he went down that they might learn of the wisdom of the Egyptians. And what was in Egypt? The pyramids, the mystery schools, Thoth the Atlantean priest king, and his emissaries. There's an entire study about what he might have been doing in Egypt, and the Gospel of the Holy 12 goes into more of what he learned down there. I'm not going to get into that today, but he went down to learn from the wisdom of the Egyptians, even as Moses did. So here he is following in Moses's footsteps, right? Moses would have been a few hundred years before him, or longer. Yeah. And going into the desert, he meditated, fasted, and prayed. Okay? Nobody's too offended yet. And he obtained the power of the holy name. Gee, I wonder what that was. We can get into that later. Weird. Why was it something he had to obtain rather than something he didn't already have? Weird. I know it's triggering some churchy viewers. Obtain the power of the holy name, by which he wrought many miracles. And for 7 years, he conversed with God face to face. And he learned of the language of the birds and of the beasts. That's a discipline called faunopathy. So he could communicate with animals. Ooh, someone going to fire up that steak? Wouldn't that get him burned in Salem? Learned the language of the birds and the beasts, and of the healing powers of trees. Oh, it sounds a little pagan. And of herbs, and of flowers, and of the hidden secrets of precious stones. Gosh, we've already covered so many modalities. And I have them all listed here. And hidden powers and secrets of precious stones. And he learned of the motions of the sun and the moon and the stars, and the powers of the letters and mysteries of the square and the circle. Ooh, sacred geometry.
You learned astrology? Didn't the Catholic Church ban astrology?
Right. And the transmutation of things and forms, and of numbers and signs.
Alchemy?
I've already lost track of how many modalities there are. Fortunately,
I was going to say that's alchemy too. Wow.
So just in this one verse, we have him, first of all, traveling somewhere to learn something he didn't know, right? Which is a strange position if you're the alleged son of Big G God, right? Even though different issue. So here's all so meditation, fasting, Christ consciousness, faunopathy, geomancy, which is sacred geometry, Christology, herbalism, astrology, rune casting, alchemy, and numerology. I think they'd be firing up the wooden stake right now, and they'd be getting ready to toast.
The Catholic Church is banned, you know, those that you see those signs where they're like, if you're interested in this, you're all going to hell. I'm pretty sure that was the list. They must have all of those things.
I actually went and researched that. It's in the Catholic Catechism. It basically says it's against all these things. So
I think it was missing yoga. That was about the only one that was banned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you can see sort of the hypocritical position that the church sprung up in. This is how they had their beginning.
Well, because they want to stop enlightenment. All of these things are about understanding reality and being able to understand the greater aspect of everything, of the all. And so, yeah, they don't want you being able to do that. That's big no. Expanding your consciousness?
And the real thing that'll bake your noodle will be, what if, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that Yeshua comes back in the flesh, even though that's not what he said. Just for the sake of argument, he comes back. And he starts doing Christology, rune casting, loves astrology, alchemy, and numerology. And he's doing those things, the very things that the church taught multiple generations of people not to do. What would the Catholic Church do? Well, they'd say the Antichrist is back. They would be in the hypocritical position of calling the Messiah the Antichrist because they think on a linear perspective, Lara. And so do most of their followers. And I'm sometimes critical of a lot of their followers only because most of them have not read the Bible. They haven't read the book.
They regurgitate it. I've regurgitated it many times throughout school. You know, you recite the Bible, you pray as you're supposed to, you learn all your blessings and things that you recite. But it's always, I shouldn't say always, but in most cases, it's regurgitation. You're just taught to recite things. And if you don't do that, you get paddled like I did. Yeah.
You know what? This is a good segue, Lara, in terms of manifestation and belief. If you would allow me a segue.
Please do.
Real quick, I mentioned this on the Astara-verse. I call it the Astara-verse. Can I call it the Astara-verse? I'm sort of like, I started saying that. I don't know why. Because there's multiple things in there. And I'm like, see, it sounds, we're like our own cinematic universe.
Yeah, basically. Love that.
If we look at the breakdown of world religions today, just in 2024, we've got about 4.14 billion Islamic, Christian, and Jewish people, right? 4.14. That's a lot. Okay. Now the other, we also have 2 billion, 2.5 Hindi, Sikh, Buddhist, other religions, and then you have about 1.3 sort of non-religious people. So by far, the biggest group is the Islamic, the Jews, and the Christians. Okay,
the three
now,
big
Abrahamic. Yes, we in the spiritual community we know a lot about law of attraction, manifestation, or at least we think we do. I'd like to zone in on that just for a second because you can consciously, in your mind's eye, you could have some concept that you're trying to manifest and bring into reality. That is an active manifestation. It's something that you're consciously thinking of and visualizing. But there's another sort of darker or grayer side of this, which is what passive beliefs do you hold? Because they also have weight. They have weight. What is it that we are unconsciously manifesting? If we want to consciously manifest abundance, that's great. But what are the other beliefs that you might be holding that you are also consciously or unconsciously manifesting, whether you like it or not? Things like death, taxes, corrupt politicians, these certain axioms that you just accept about society all the time. And these are passive beliefs. And we think it's lived experience, but I would challenge that and say they are a passive belief of the masses. Let me give you an example. In the Islamic, Christian, and Jewish religions, the concept of hell is a thing. Not for Jews. Jews just don't believe you're going to heaven. So I refer to it as a passive belief in hell, or at least not heaven. Okay, so we have 4.14 billion people with this passive belief that everybody that is not in their group is going to hell, or at least not going to heaven. That's a very passive thing that they're holding on to. These people aren't walking around saying, you're going to hell, and you're going to hell, and you're going to hell. It's not like that. It's just a passive thing that they believe. Okay. And so what happens when we do the math, and I did the math, for the Islamic religion, that's 3.9 billion people who are going to hell, or at least not heaven. In the Christian religion, that's 3.5 billion people who are going to hell, or at least not heaven. And in the Jewish religion, well, that's, since there's not a ton of them around, that's 8 billion people that are not going to heaven. So if you add all those up in a mathematical thing, just how many people are going to hell, you end up with 15.5 billion people that are going to hell, which is more than we have on this planet. That's an average of
big party down there. Yes. It reminds me, I'm cracking up because I'm thinking of that scene in South Park. You remember that scene where they're like, everybody's in hell and they're all like, what are we doing down here? And he's like, I was a devout Christian. I did everything right. Another Buddhist was like, no, I was doing everything right. Another person was like, what the hell? You know, we all thought we were going to heaven. What's the deal? And the guy gets up on the podium and he goes, nope, it was the Mormons. The Mormons got it right. All the rest of you were down here.
I love that, because religion, if you follow mainstream religions, it's sort of reduced to a guessing game. You know, which one were you raised in? Which did you pick the right one? Like, what is it really a board game? Are you rolling the dice? It seems so mathematically ludicrous if you just apply a little bit of thought to it. But nonetheless, 15 billion people are going to hell. Now, what could that manifest here on Earth if the mathematical force of 15 billion people, which is more than we have here on the planet, what could that manifest here? Hell? Couldn't that manifest hell on Earth?
A lot of people already think we're in hell, and that we leave hell when we die. We ascend higher.
100%. And so my sort of axe to grind today, I guess, is with this belief, this passive belief that 4.14 billion people hold. And the reason is because if you can make people afraid, you can control them. And so if you can make people afraid of going to hell, and 4.14 billion people are afraid of going to hell, that is sort of a perfectly symmetrical triangle, if we get back to geometry, on which to play Overlord. So you can pull puppet strings amongst that perfect proportion of the population, 4.14 billion people, and you can play them off against each other for generations and do war profiteering and all kinds of dark things, and people will nonetheless be the wiser. And the minute they decide to come together, the world elite know it's over. But as long as they have this passive belief puppet string that they're holding everyone by and making people unconsciously manifest hell on earth, they're in their own heaven.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Anyway,
we're always shifting the frequencies of Earth too. One of the things that we talked about on the Chen Chat the other day is how entities, if the density is low enough, they can manifest themselves physically. not too long ago, we found out that there's a lot of light beings that are able to come here now because we've managed to lift the frequency up high enough for them to occupy that space as well. So it's funny how you get pockets on Earth that are so low in vibration. You do have dark entities that can come in and basically take over the space. Whereas in other areas that are so populated by light beings and love and high vibrational energy that they are kept far back because the frequency is too high for them to come to. So it's like we're constantly shifting frequencies, not just around the world and in our environment, but within ourselves.
Holy moly, that you are spot on. And that was let me add on to your point a little bit. First of all, there's so many different pockets of low vibe, and there's a lot of pockets of high vibe spread all across the earth, right?
I'm finding them.
And if you were to plot these on a map and sort of link them, well, let me be solution oriented here. I don't know. Maybe your audience knows about the Maharishi effect. Maybe they don't. The Maharishi, sure. The Maharishi effect references a study done in Washington, D.C. And I actually have this paper. It's really cool. They gathered a few hundred people and took them to the D.C. area and had them meditate for a period of 3 to 5 months. I think it was maybe closer to 5 months. And day to day, they would just be in they call it transcendental meditation, which is a specific type of meditation. But they were in meditation and they were just working. They were trying to project peace and good vibes out through the meditation. And on record, while they were engaged in this study, violent crime rates dropped by 16%. Right.
Wow.
And so now it's much cooler than what I'm saying, but I'm just being conservative here. If a few hundred people could, just by meditating, lower violent crimes over a period of months by that much, that process of meditation became known as the Maharishi effect. Now, I sort of have this, I don't know, I don't want to call it pie in the sky, but what if we stopped spending all the money on the stupid wars and, funded efforts to create a global Maharishi effect, right? Isn't that the shift? Isn't that where I actually have some numbers on this. So the way the math works on this, Lara, is you'd look at a square root of 1% of a population. Well, if we take a square root of 1% of the global population, then you're going to need about 9,000 meditators. It's not that many.
No,
it's not that many. And if they were spread out among all the different time zones, the 23, 24 time zones, and we could fund them at $100K a year a piece, so your full-time job is just meditating, wouldn't we make better progress as a planet than doing some of the other stupid things we do with money? Like, because the global Maharishi effect, in my humble opinion, is what is being described when the New Age community talks about a shift. That the effect that would have on the entire globe would be an increase in those high vibe spots you were talking about, Lara, and a decrease in the low vibe spots you were mentioning. If there were 9,000 people in transcendental meditation at during any minute of any day, holy moly, right? So I think that is, if I could just start a nonprofit and have infinite funds and offer people 6 figures to just meditate, I would do it in a heartbeat, right? That is, but as it is, we can't even get, tax dollars to fill potholes on the highway. So we have a little ways to go.
I liked Cody's comment. I see that, Cody. Cody says, this same effect occurs through the media with normies. It's kind of ironic. Yeah. Because if you think about it, they're also being put into a meditative state through many of their entertainment things that they get involved in. That's why the television does tend to kind of put you into a trance. And it does tend to put you almost into a meditative state. When they say you're vegging out on the couch, you're zonking out, you don't realize how much you are actually kind of in a form of meditation, but not really a positive one. It's a great point, Cody.
Absolutely. And thank you, Cody. That is a wonderful point. And it leads into kind of what we were saying earlier, is what is your passive belief? What is the passive belief of somebody that sits on the couch and watches reality TV all the time? What is it? It's one thing for people to manage their active belief, but I almost want to have a shirt that says like, bro, can you own your passive belief too? Like, can you put at least a little bit of effort into what you passively believe and understand? Because at any given time, we've got 35% of people believing the other 65% are going to hell. And we are surprised that we have hell in many ways here.
Yeah. Well, I think that hell is basically a state of mind. It's another layer of the consciousness. In fact, one of the things they do talk about is that you can manifest your afterlife to a degree as well, what you expect to see. And so many people are actually tricked into manifesting a sort of hell realm for themselves. One of my favorite movies that goes into this is What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. Absolutely love that
Brilliant
movie.
Film. Very sad, it's about how the children pass away, and then the husband passes away, and the mother she takes her own life, and they all go somewhere else. When they die, she goes to a dark place. He goes and tries to help her to kind of bring her back up. So it's almost like in her own mind, she gets trapped in her own mind. And he actually has to go down and lift her frequency, help her pick, herself up and raise her frequency to get out of that mindset, that hellscape she manifested for herself.
There's so much there. And, yet I feel like most people are just watching garbage things when they could be seeing something like that might stop and make them think for a minute.
Yeah. Brilliant film.
It is brilliant. Just as is The Matrix. We just watched that with the family a couple nights ago. It's like a documentary, in my humble opinion.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I with your audience and with their help, I think maybe we could generate a new passive belief if we could sort of let go of some of the old mainstream passive beliefs and maybe institute some new passive beliefs that our overall goal here is to bring heaven to earth. Because if the Hermetic rule of as above, so below applies, then the reverse is also true. And so we will never see heaven anywhere if we don't see it here first. And so this is our mission. And this is why I think, people like you and a ton of your followers and the good folks on Astara are here to help bring heaven back to earth. Because everybody wants to go there, but you can't get there by condemning 65% of the population who don't think like you do to hell. That's not a thing. And remember, guys, the church would have burned Jesus Christ at the stake by their own rules.
Yeah. Well, technically, if you think about it, the Romans kind of did.
That actually played out.
They kind of did, actually. So
I got involved in. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I don't remember where it was now, but I got involved in a discussion this past Easter about the resurrection, and it's so interesting when you look at the other different texts that were left out of the Bible about the resurrection, and it's too much to get into here now. But suffice to say, I asked the question many years ago, what was the difference between Lazarus's resurrection and Jesus? Right? I already knew the answer before I asked, because I'm like that. But I ask it as just a means to like get people to think. And I was at one of my FU Fridays, our little religious debates that we have on Fridays.
Love it. Yes, I remember the Fuck You Fridays. That's great. With your mom. Yes, that's lovely.
My mom's probably listening. Hello, Mom. But the resurrection, the difference between the two resurrections, because we were given two examples, yet they played out entirely different. And if you ask a mainstream religion believer, they'll just say, well, yeah, because he's the Son of God. Okay, but let's zoom in on it for a second. Lazarus died in a physical body and came out of his tomb in a physical body, right? So that's one type of resurrection, the physical back to the physical. The purpose of Yeshua's resurrection was not, he did not come back out in a physical body. In fact, I don't think a lot of people have this context, but anyone who reads Dolores Cannon does. He came out in a spirit body. He wanted to show that there was a continuance, that there's something beyond the physical flesh. Whereas Lazarus got cast back down into physical flesh to continue his life, Yeshua sort of ascended to a spirit body, an energy body. And then he was literally teleporting around, place to place, talking to people. And physical bodies don't do that. Those are energy bodies. The church isn't ready to understand this. But what Yeshua was doing is he was showing there's continuance past death. Yes. This is why the two resurrections were different. And so that's why one of them, I think, was a true physical resurrection, and the other one just showed continuance. And I am a strong believer that we need to talk about continuance in life because there's more than what's here in this present, in our daily struggles, in our daily life. One day we'll all stop and we will continue on. And that's what Yeshua came to explain. Not that you're going to be like a zombie and come back and be like, I'm back, look, check out my wounds. It's not that. It's not that, church. You missed it, church.
You know what's funny? You know what's interesting? And so about a week ago, maybe a couple days ago, I had a case that came through, an SRT case. And this person that I checked them, they were what we call a walkout, or what I am coining a walkout. Because we have walk-ins. To walk in. This was a walkout. Yes. The original soul said, fuck this, I'm out of here, I'm done. And they left. And their body went on autopilot for 2 years. They basically became an NPC. Their chakras turned off completely. Their soul guides left and disconnected. And they were essentially the living dead for 2 years. That's what they said.
Yeah.
That's what the soul guides said. They were the living dead for 2 years, just going through the motions. Nobody was home, if you know what I mean. The lights were on, but nobody was in the house. And they recently just came back. They decided, okay, I'll go back in. So they re-entered. And so that is why they booked the clearing, as it was the time for them. We turned their chakras back on for them. We helped reintroduce and bring new soul guides in. They didn't have guides when we tuned in. So we had to reissue them soul guides.
And this is something you guys were doing in your session. You're like, oh, hey, we found this wandering meat suit. Can we get it some guides? Like,
yeah, that blew my mind. In fact, I got goosebumps right now while talking about it. Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
So it was a walk out and then a walk in, where they just said, I'm done. I can't believe it. I can't take it anymore. And the body stayed alive for them to 2 years to come back.
The body's magnificent. It can do a lot on very little.
I know, right?
Lara, was this client, was it someone like remotely present or physically present? Did you guys have eyeballs on?
Well, they're in the body now. It's like the clearing happened so that we could turn all the features on the house. We turned the electricity back on, basically, in the house for them.
I'm curious. How did they receive the news that they weren't even really a person?
I did not share. I was told it was not something they needed to know.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. That would be quite a mind trip to tell someone.
Yeah. So no, I did not include it in the report.
Holy moly.
I know.
But that's great work. I mean, and having awareness of that, if that could happen, what's on the other end? right? If the shallow meat suit husk thing can happen, sort of on the yin side of the yin yang, what's the polar opposite? Well, you could start to have these avatars, these spiritually enlightened people that can light up the room just by walking in. People that just want to spread love and authenticity and wisdom. People that can lead entire movements, peaceful movements. That could happen also.
Yeah.
And so if everything is a spectrum, everything's equal or opposite, like Einstein said.
Yeah. But when you were talking about Lazarus, I just thought that was a good way to segue into that, because if you think about it, death is not what we expect.
No.
You don't have, your vessel does not have to die in order for you to cross over.
Right.
And a lot of other stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Especially that's what happens with walk-ins. The original soul leaves and crosses over and a new soul comes in. But in this particular case, it was the same soul that came back. It was like, keep it warm for me. I'll be back. I can handle this shit more.
It's like a rental car, and then you have on the other side, you have Enterprise Rent a Car there with their committee of spiritual guides, and it's like, okay, who's going to rent this next? Anybody? Anybody?
Don't let it go to waste. This is a perfectly good vessel. Yeah, exactly. So it's funny how life and death and resurrection, it is a lot more complicated than we realize.
Right. And I sort of think we might have it wrong in a way, in that the life, I think, is on the other side and death is here.
Yeah.
Your process from if you're born all the way to when you expire, that could be viewed from the spiritual side as you coming into a classroom to learn something. Like, you're not ready yet. You're in training. You don't even get to begin living until you finish Earth school, right?
Yeah.
And they could take the training wheels off. And so in a way, death is here, and we see that manifest everywhere. And death is not up there. So I sort of think it's been ingrained into us in the inverse. Which is what
we're all
the
just
global
wearing a virtual reality headset right now? What if we're like Neo, strapped to a chair right now, plugged in? There's a Rick and Morty episode about this, actually, where there's a guy that entered an arcade and he puts on the virtual reality thing, and then he goes through a whole life. Have you seen that Rick and Morty episode?
I have not seen the Rick and Morty episode, but I've seen the clips. I've seen the clips of what you're describing.
But yeah, he literally he lived a whole life in this chair where he's like, he goes to school, he meets his wife, he has a new job, he goes to school, he finishes all these things, and then ends up dying as an old man. And then he wakes up in the chair going, "Where's my wife? Where's my children?" They're like, "It wasn't real, man. It wasn't real." And he's like, "What are you talking about? Where's my family?"
I love it. Yeah. I love it.
It's basically
but think about it.
What we're dealing with, in a way. It's a game that we're playing in the astral.
Right. It is 100%. And the simulation has to be convincing for us to play it. Right. If we could see behind the matrix perfectly, we might be like, "Oh, I get it. I'm actually in a penny arcade right now. I'm not really listening to this boring conference call." Like you could just see, if you could see the code streaming down, you might disengage. Right.
Yeah. I think many of us, have you ever seen that movie Lucy?
I have seen Lucy, yes.
Brilliant film. And when her abilities start turning on, what does she see? She sees everything. She can see the calls being made from satellite. She can see, she can change things, the languages as she's reading them. There's just so many things that in that movie that I could see as a reality for somebody that would be able to activate themselves to that degree. Being able to see all the streams of information that's around us at all times, the radiation coming from your router, all those things that are around us all the time, but we just don't know about because we can't see it.
Folks, turn off your routers at night, turn off your modems.
Yes, every night. Yep. I got myself a new clock that I keep next to the bed as well. I leave my phone elsewhere so that way I can, I'm ordered a new clock so that way I have to go downstairs to get my phone rather than keeping it next to me while I sleep. It does help, actually. Keeping all that stuff away from you, out of your etheric.
And this is an interesting point because if the global elites methodology is control, then they're going to attempt to control people through all means, right? Any means available to them. And so some of that is frequency and food and water. And to the extent that you guys can purify your frequency, your food, your water, that you will loosen their hold on you. But I do tend to see some issues in the spiritual community, if I could be self-critical of us for a minute, where a lot of people are really good and really focused in one area. They might be a really good, really good at leading people in mantra meditation or something like that. But then, they'll turn around and they'll get a bag of Fritos from the vending machine. And it's like, we have to start living our own advice. We have to start holding ourselves accountable, because if we don't want to be subject to the global elite's control, we need to figure out how to not just increase our spiritual health, but our physical health too. Yes. Because an unhealthy and sick population can easily be dominated. And so if I could be a little self-critical, and I am, and I apologize if anyone doesn't like to hear this, but we must figure out how to better source our food. At the very least, there's so much we can do within our own household, even if it's just shutting off your router and modem at night. That's a step in the right direction. No, I'm not judging anyone. What I would like to see is baby steps, though. Can we at least try and get on the same page with health to begin with, so that we're not such pushovers?
Yesterday, one of the soul guides said, "You disrespect your body every time you consume something you know you're not supposed to have. That you know that your body does not need." You disrespect your body every time you consume something you know is not good for you, and you're doing it anyway.
I hear that, and in one sense, I totally agree with it. In another, I understand people need to treat themselves. I understand that too. And I'm not...
It's okay to treat yourself, but whenever you are when you are aware that something is not good for you, and you're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it anyway. I do that myself too. So I laughed and I was like, "You're calling me out with this one, aren't you too?" And they're like,
No, I'm not calling anyone specifically out.
They always do. The soul guys are like, we're talking to you too, Laura, right? I'm like, yes. No, this one's for me too.
Nobody's perfect, myself included. But I think the only thing that, if we could all just take baby steps, and I mean baby steps, if we could all just take some baby steps that we're happy with, you can hold on to that. Like, no one is saying go eat kale for 3 meals a day, right? No one is saying that. But if you could take a baby step, then you will have done yourself a wonderful favor.
Absolutely. So. Yes. Our light bodies, they need the energetic sustenance. And if you're not imbibing that energy for your light body, then you end up feeling tired and drained and lacking nutrients and all kinds of things. Keeping your vessel healthy is one of the most important things when it comes for your own consciousness expansion. I've realized my abilities, after starting treating my vessel better, my abilities started coming online like crazy. So it
really helps.
Yeah.
100%. It really helps. It's funny that you mentioned like vegetables and whatnot, because in my hypnosis sessions recently, I've had an abundance of gardeners, right? People that would go experience a life as some type of a gardener. And it's not just somebody planting and tending to plants. It's somebody doing something metaphysical with the plants. Like, they're telepathically communicating to the plants and making them grow, or curing the plants of disease, or that's a discipline called fluoropathy. Like, they're literally talking to plants with telepathy. Right. And it's weird, because I think we see some of this coming back in the mainstream, not just in some science articles about the benefits of talking nice to your plants and playing your plants nice music, but also thinking good thoughts at them. And I know you were talking yesterday or the day before about the water and thinking good thoughts to your water. That's a wonderful study to read, by the way. That stuff is real. And it's weird that, we're talking about it now. And I've had some sessions recently where gardening and talking to plants, fluoropathy was a thing. So
you've got your web series here based on health, right? Part 1. Let me see. I'm sharing these links for you here.
Oh, thank you. The web series isn't about health. The web series is about this one particular. First of all, people like this. I'll do more of these. But like this is the first part of what I expect to be maybe a 4 or 5 part series about this one particular client's regression, where he met 2 mysterious travelers, biblical travelers, by the way. And I'll just leave it at that. And so I'm cutting up this guy's regression into several parts, and I'm doing my best with the video editing to try and really communicate the feeling that came through this client during this one session. And so this was a super cool regression. Yeah, so that link is there.
Oh, wonderful. There's so much insight that's coming through. It's almost like we're trying to sort out all the misinformation that's out there. You know, it's like we're uncovering all the mistruths right now and getting a deeper understanding of knowledge that we've been basically hypothesizing on for probably a few thousand years, some of us, you know, through all our various incarnations. So it's nice to have new insight.
If the material left out of the Bible could be in a book, like this is just one of like 20 different, you know, if they could leave all of this out of the Bible, what knowledge has been denied everybody? And this one particular client that is in the web series, his past life persona even calls that out about how the law, which I guess I took it to mean like the Jewish Torah, even the law's message has been corrupted over time. Right. Yes. And so it's just the telephone game. And so anyone that's holding hard and fast to their mainstream religion is really holding hard and fast to the telephone game, because guys, they left all this out. And this was all politics. And this was all, you know, the stuff they left out. The reason why this was left out was politics and power plays and power struggles and concepts they weren't comfortable with. So it was all flawed humans that left this stuff out. Never forget that. Right. I also should say, make sure you actually read and get comfortable with the actual mainstream Bible too, because you can't have the thesis without the antithesis. You can't have that. You have to understand how to integrate both. And you have to read with discernment. That's I guess maybe my parting message, Lara, is we have to read with discernment. So many, myself included, we came up in mainstream religions, and to some degree, maybe not me, but I know maybe some of your viewers felt persecuted by the church. And so it caused a bunch of people to run and never look back.
I've been saying for years I'm a recovering Christian.
Yeah. But if you develop discernment, if you develop a pair of reading glasses with your spiritual awareness, then you go back in there and you start, wait, no, this is actually a metaphor. This is actually a story about X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. This is a story about extraterrestrials. This is a story about how crazy Moses was. Okay, you can actually start to see the real story. And you don't have to feel.
Movie Dogma? Dogma was talking about this. So they put this in the movie Dogma, where they were saying, like, stop taking everything so literally. Like,
yes.
Love that. Yes, it's totally meant to be basically taken into your own interpretation. Everybody but that's the problem, is that so many people promoted their interpretation as gospel, as fact.
They did.
Preachers still do it to this day. They're constantly shifting and changing things based on their own perspective, which, I mean, isn't wrong. But when you're telling everybody it's the only way, that is the issue. You know, when you're saying you have to agree with me. Well, that was the biggest problem with
Doctrine is the enemy of discernment. Doctrine is the enemy of discernment. So if anyone's trying to get you to subscribe to a doctrine, what they're really saying is, I've done all the thinking for you. Stop thinking. Believe this. Right? And that removes your own discernment, and that disempowers you. Yeah. And so as long as you have discernment, dive into these texts and analyze them, and maybe you can unpersecute yourselves. I'm not telling you to go back to church, not by a long stretch. All I'm saying is the Bible, as it was taught incorrectly. But there's a lot of good information in there about, like, extraterrestrial origins. I mean, the Tower of Babylon is an insanely interesting story once you realize it's a story about ET intervention or angry sort of evolved human intervention. Like we could talk about it sometime, but if you have discernment, Lara, you can actually dive back into these things.
I like what Jamie just said. I tend to follow all paths that lead to the light. I'm with you on that, Jamie. There's countless. Gotta love it.
There's a spot, maybe this will be my last point. There's a spot in the Gospel of Judas, which, you can tell what the Romans did with that, right? They definitely did not put it in the Bible. But the Gospel of Judas, guys, is incredible. And it's a short read. It's only like 7 or 8 pages. You could read it while you're having a cup of coffee. But in that one gospel, you see how Yeshua was, walked up on his disciples giving a Thanksgiving prayer. And he's calling his disciples out because they're not praying to Big G. They're praying to the extraterrestrial God, Yahweh. Right? And Yeshua was not a fan. Not a fan. And he sort of chastised them for that. And then he sort of calls out his disciples again. He's like, does anyone among you know the truth? Is anyone brave enough to stand up and tell me that they know what's what? I'm paraphrasing, guys. But Judas stood up and said, yeah, he said, you are the son of Barbelo, Barbelo, and not the son of Yahweh. And the son of Barbelo, if you look in Gnostic wisdom, I have a whole hierarchy. I have a flow chart, guys. Barbelo was the very first aeon, the very first dimension, the very first being that sprung into existence that Big G created. Big G first created Barbelo, and then together they created everything else. One of the first things they created together was the Holy Spirit, or Yeshua, in the Gnostic tradition, and that was the avatar that came. But the book goes into the rest of the hierarchy. Yahweh is way, 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 way down the hierarchy, and everyone's stuck praying to Yahweh. And here comes Yeshua being like, right up here, right at the top. And he's got to put up with his disciples, like praying to some lower being. So interesting. And then it talks about how Judas is scared. They planned for Judas to betray Jesus. This was a plan. Judas didn't want to do it. But he said, basically, because you know all the Gnostic wisdom, Judas, you have to betray me. You have to be the one to do it because these guys don't know anything. And so that was that story. Yeah.
I love your insight, Scott. This is why I had brought Scott on today, because I was like, he was sharing stuff on Monday that I was like, people need to hear this. Like, this is absolutely brilliant. You are so talented at expressing new insight into these very old stories that are, I truly believe that they are based in truth. And so it's funny how much we have to kind of dig through and find the truth. It's like the diamond in the rough kind of thing in these. Yeah, but it's there. It's 100% there.
Those are kind words. Thank you, Lara. One day when we do this again, I'll bring even more fun stories.
Love it. And thank you by the way, for your chats on Astara. There's a couple in recording. So if you guys have enjoyed it today, make sure that you also go and check out Scott's recordings on Astara. We've had some wonderful chats up there. And also, I'm going to share you a link one more time for everybody so they can follow you. It's Matrix Hypnosis is the name of Scott's page. You probably see him popping up all the time. We really appreciate you, Scott, with all of your support. You've been so wonderful when it comes to showing up to events and for adding insight and for making such thought-provoking posts on your own page. And so make sure that you guys give Scott a follow.
I'm grateful to you, Lara, for leading this wonderful herd of spiritually enlightened people. So I'm grateful for that. And I tune in myself. So.
And I look forward to your next chat on Astara. So thank you very much. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. It's going to be a happy Friday, I'm sure. So make sure you guys get out there and enjoy yourselves. We do have a couple little things. Where's my drop my phone? That's where it is. It's all the way down here. I have some of our Astara events really quick to promote. We've got So today at 12, we have the Activate Your Light, the opening of the Lionsgate portal, the third eye chakra activation with Marla Lumina. That will be at noon. And today at 12 p.m., we have Ninja Turtles, Turtle Power with Dr. Scott and friends. That'll be today at noon. So make sure that you guys come back on Astara in just under an hour from now. And then at 7 p.m. today, we have a group past life regression with Lori Rossi. Scott has also led some of those group past life regressions. They're wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you guys are interested, make sure that you check those out. And thank you again, Scott, for everything. I really appreciate you. And don't forget, guys, I also have my social media marketing course is going to be on Sunday, where I teach you guys everything about how I do my social media work. So that way I can give you guys all kinds of tips and tricks for growing your own pages and businesses. So I will drop that link below as well. So if you guys would like to join me on that Sunday, I look forward to seeing you. Otherwise, I'll see you all on Monday. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Lara.
Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye, guys.